everybody. Welcome to the world according to the blind dog. And we're still on the road to the coast. Got plenty of time, nice long flat road in front of us. So I'll tell you about the recycle guy, best I can remember. In downtown Yoki, and it's cool downtown, so I decided to get out, walk around, take some pictures, say hello. A cool little downtown area. Morrow Hardware. Trailer hitches, Jesse, you're in Texas. Yeah, this is cool. Having some settling problems on that one. That's some cool architecture right there. Old school brick. Beautiful. One building up here caught my eye. first started seeing him, he was an extra on that show, Practical Jokers. He'd come on every now and then, and he was the recycle guy. That's just what it was. And I got a job with the dude. What I did was similar to what I did in the real world, was drive all these other different locations, but I would pick up their recycles and take it back to him. He had invented some way of converting anything into a useful fluid. Imagine the money behind that if that was reality. He could take anything. He could take antifreeze and motor oil and sewage and run it through this system. Anyway, it was so stable that you could drink it. And it tasted kind of sweet, but it was like, people used it for motor oil, people used it for antifreeze. Some people drank it. But anyway, I'd go to all these different locations and pick up this stuff to take back to be recycled. And that was his gig. I remember the sky was always pretty much gray. And not with any kind of cloud definition, just gray. But everything on terra firma was green. Everything was green. Everything was grown over with green. Houses had green on them. Something growing, everything. There were houses that were made into mounds of dirt that were covered in green. And trees were everywhere. And it was just a beautiful thing. And I drove around in a little pickup truck with a camper on the back of it, and I picked up that stuff and took it back to him. Next day I showed up to work, did the same thing. Also, there was a favorite spot where I used to stop and like to take my lunch. It was behind a Dollar General or that type of store, but it was green back in there, and I would just sit and eat my lunch, go back to work. It occurred to me that he lived nearby the hospital where I was at, and these nurses were showing up with this stuff. Now, I have no idea what they were giving me in the real world, but in my dream world, it was one of the most fantastic things I had ever tasted. And it was sweet and milky and creamy. It was just, but he'd made that from bamboo. Somehow he was able to into that, and it was very popular. I remember in my memory, I was telling the nurses, hey, here's $20, bring me some of that. Of course, they wouldn't do it. I was intubated or on the ventilator. Oh. And how the recycle guy actually came into my life, where I met the guy. He had an ambulance, and he probably gave me a ride in a real ambulance, because the bills showed up after I got out of the hospital. So that's how I met him, and that's how I found out he lived right there by the hospital. In fact, like I mentioned on the early video, I thought I was leaving the hospital and I would go sleep at his house. But no such thing happened. I was bedridden. remember that he ended up marrying the local weather lady, typical trophy wife, and she was attractive, but she ran a spa, and then he worked out of the place in the back doing his recycling gig. But one particularly unusual aspect of that sequence is there was a guy who apparently was a pioneer in printed circuit board development. He was also one of the writers on that desert combat show from the 60s, Rat Patrol. And he also did some writing, and he was the one that was actually credited for coining the phrase the very first time. That you've heard it a million times on all these cartoons, but he was the one that wrote this. Now, this isn't my dream. This is not reality. But he wrote that phrase, heavens to Murgatroyd. You've all heard it, heavens to Murgatroyd. I don't know if he ever got royalties on something like that, but he got the credit for being the first guy to say it. Anyhow, he died. He passed away. And he donated his body to the recycle guy to be recycled into something useful, and I respect that. So I found that to be peculiar, but I respected it nonetheless. Dying man's wishes and the lot. Somehow I remember going on another ambulance ride with the recycle guy and the body of the circuit board pioneer dude, heavens to Murgatroyd. And we drove out to his other property where he did the hardcore recycling and hung him up to just drip into this ooze. And then he recycled the ooze. Oh boy. And that's why I wonder, it's a whole different video to start talking about frequency. I'll have to do this one with you, but nonetheless, if you start understanding the importance of frequency in your day-to-day life, you start understanding that this whole universe is wrapped in one kind of frequency or the other. So you start wondering about being able to move in between certain frequencies of reality. You move into another universe, it's totally multiverse type thing, it's very physics and scientific theorized, but you're basically, moving in between dimensions. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. And coming into Victoria. US Highway 59, Waterburger. But nonetheless, when you start thinking about it, it certainly is a possibility, and that's all a theory is to begin with. This is a possibility. It's not, none of this is proven to be true. Oh, we're in Edna. I needed to stop and check the map. None of this proven to be true. But I experienced some wild stuff. So, and then on top of that, when I got out of the dadgum hospital, I wasn't sure if I was alive or not. I went around telling myself, if this is the afterlife, it ain't half bad. Edna's got its own HEB. Be a good spot to check the map, wouldn't it, gents? jump over here. Because you're going to have to get off this road directly, if memory serves you somewhat. But we'll go over here, out of everybody's way. I'll be back